Well, good afternoon. It is afternoon, and where we are, if it's morning where you are at, good morning. If it's evening, good evening. We are back again with another topic, and we are planning to have a great time today. We thought about something, we didn't think about it before, but as we were talking, Maria is my co host on cross cultural affairs and how to do business around the globe, hassle free with ease, and
Making your life easier and simpler, I guess.
make it a lot
Without a
easier.
headache. How
And,
to do
and- yes,
business without
yes.
a headache.
And we were talking about something that we didn't think about before, and that is the need of generalization and the risk of stereotyping. And then we were trying to figure out which angle we take it from. But what we know is that in our increasingly globalized world, cross cultural interactions have become an integral part of both personal and professional life. While understanding cultural difference is crucial for effective communication and collaboration, we often find ourselves walking a fine line between helpful generalization and harmful stereotypes. So, this discussion hopefully will explore the delicate balance between the need for cultural generalization to navigate diverse environments and the importance of avoiding oversimplification that lead or can lead to stereotyping. And we are going to touch on few examples as we see it happening today in the corporate world as well, in the e-learning world. So we'll take it from here, Maria. Let's start from whatever point you want to take this to.
We were talking about a few different things, and I thought we were going to be exploring a little bit more than the generalization and stereotyping. I thought we were going to be looking a little bit more at the importance of why learning about intercultural issues is so important, especially the oversimplification of using, for example, canned, pre-recorded or workbooks that are online PDFs, which I have noticed, like after 24 years of doing cross-cultural training, I've noticed that a lot of companies have been moving in that direction
Uh-huh.
in order to simplify, I guess, to simplify their lives. But you're seeing that the quality is really, really drastically going down, which probably contributes to what you're talking about
Yeah.
for a host of different reasons. It's not the same thing to sit with someone and have all of your questions answered than to be given a link to a pre-recorded session. Which, let's be honest, folks, when you have a required e-learning module, everybody usually tends to procrastinate till the very last moment. If it's not required, you probably won't even bother,
Yeah.
and you probably won't open it, and you'll just kind of wing it. And that's the problem when it comes to a lot of these, asynchronous learning tools, as opposed to how we were doing until about 5 minutes ago, probably pre-pandemic, where we were getting a nice, robust specialization with experts. Not only would you learn about a specific country, you'd learn about a region, and you'd have a country or city expert answering all of your very specialized questions. And I
Yeah.
think that is that something that you've noticed too, Mona?
Yeah, absolutely. I've noticed that, and more and more we're moving towards the e-learning. And beside what you just mentioned, how much can you actually grasp from going on the internet or going on a portal and clicking on a certain topic within the cross-cultural discipline, and you actually can grasp to apply within your daily interaction with different people from different part of the world. So how much can you do that versus if you have somebody that is really teaching you, is talking about the topic, and have possesses experience or have been in those environment that he's teaching on. I mean, how much can you grasp between the e-learning and a person who is specialized in that field, actually there teaching, instructing, and answering your questions? And that's something, perhaps because, yes, there are some elements of culture where generalization is needed. And of course, let's say, for example, if we are for somebody that's coming to study the American culture as an example, he will or she will look at the American culture as a whole. But when we are dealing, let's say, for example, we are talking about someone from New York and someone from Texas, they do know for a fact that they are quite different in terms of their daily operation and how they do things and how fast a New Yorker pace is versus the Texan, so on and so forth. They do know the difference, but for somebody outside of that realm or outside of the United States, they have to look at them as being the same to understand more about the American culture. But we do know that no two people are alike. So you just cannot come and just put on a portal or platform. All right, today we are going to learn about Iran as an example. Well, Iran is a big country. And then so often you just, oh, okay, Iran is a Muslim country. Okay. What else? Are you going to compare Iran, Shia sect, with the Jafari uh, denominations, which is 12 Jafari denominations, with another country where Islam is the dominant faith? Let's say, just pick one. I'll just say, for example, Algeria. You are going to make mistakes because
Well,
you cannot generalize. You have to take one part of Iran and study it and then go to the different parts of Iran. That's the only way you are going to understand, and we are giving an example. That's the only way you are going to understand the Iranian way of doing things, because when we're talking about Iran, we're talking about so many civilizations that occupied, inhabited the country, that left an impact and influence in that culture. And even today, if you're going to an Armenian side of Iran, is going to be a different atmosphere if you go, for example, compared to if you go to a city of Qom, which is one of the holiest city of Iran. Things are going to be different. We have to be very aware of the different aspects of the national cultures within Iran.
Well, there you go. You're talking about the richness of experience that an instructor-led training will bring that no pre-recorded or no module will bring you. You need to customize and personalize. It reminds me of that conversation we had
Yeah,
where you said, what are the Chinese like? What Chinese person are you talking about? You see the huge country, you see the regions, you see the socioeconomic levels. There's going to be so many levels, so many different layers, and that's why I think it's so important to not oversimplify when you're talking. I mean, technical learning, okay, I'm perfectly
yeah,
fine with learning technical stuff, which doesn't change. You don't have to be updating. Well, yes, you do probably, but not it to the same degree as you do with our changing world, which is so complex. And
yeah.
not only that, but you touched upon another point, and
Mhm.
that is the emotional element. And we all know that when you do a little bit of storytelling,
Uh-huh.
when you are able to make an emotional connection with the cognitive, that's when learning actually sticks. And I
Yep.
can tell you that years later, I sometimes bump into people saying LinkedIn or whatnot, and they'll be like, 12 years ago, you gave me a training and you told this story, and I still remember that. So if something sticks after 12 years, I think we're doing something right. Don't you think, Mona?
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I mean, um, like you said, we are oversimplifying complex cultural nuances that no portal and no module is going to really give you the best overview of what that culture is about. And on top of that, beside the oversimplification, there is a potential of discrimination and prejudice that we have to be aware of. Because if you're not quite understanding the differences between, going back to Iran as an example, between all these 12 Jafari, we call them madahib, Jafari sects, I mean, you're just going to be missing the point. You will be missing the point. We want to make people aware of and avoid and bring specialized person to teach, to talk about this, and people who have experiences in those particular disciplines.
And I think here's the thing, it's one thing to have a very general overview, but in my experience, when you have a high level executive who's
Yeah.
moving from one place to another, or even a middle level executive, but their productivity and their effectiveness is going to depend on their successful adaptation.
Hmm.
I think it's very risky to think that you can just let that be handled by a very general training. I think it's very important for there to be certain levels of interactivity. And as a matter of fact, to my clients, I usually suggest the following. I say, let the person do their transfer or their move. Give
Uh-huh.
them at least 4 to 6 weeks to get a feel. I think, in my experience, the best point for a cross-cultural training is 4 to 6 weeks into their assignment, where they've had a chance to make some observation. They've even had a chance to make a mistake or two.
Yeah.
And then they finally have the context and the understanding of what they actually need. And they'll be paying attention because they're not so stuck on all of the logistics of their move.
Yeah.
Because when I do a training before they move, half of this stuff, since they can't apply it right away, they don't know, and they'll forget it. So the recall is not there. I always suggest letting the people who are going to be making the move when we're talking about expats here, or even short-term assignees.
Uh-huh.
Let them get situated. And at that point, it's like, okay, what have you noticed? What is fascinating? What are you confused about? And
Uh-huh.
what don't you like? This is the moment, and it's the moment to start talking about, like you said, what are the complexities? What do you
Yeah.
think is going to be challenging for you? What do you think you're going to have to work on? And
Yeah.
that's very different from when you're talking about two teams that are working interculturally in a virtual environment. That's a whole different story. And maybe you can get away with general training. But when it comes to somebody who's going to be responsible for very specific deliverables, and they also have to adapt to a new environment, I think it's essential that they get the level of specialization that
Yeah.
comes with a one-on-one training.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in other words, what you're saying is we do need to create a cultural generalization to teach and learn certain culture, but keep the individuality in mind because each person requires different method of teaching and different way of doing things at the same time. That's for the person that we're teaching, and also if they're in certain leadership positions, or if, like, let's say, for example, if they're going abroad or they're dealing with other groups, we have to also educate them on the individuality on the other side. I mean,
Yes.
that's
And
what I,
the engagement is going to be much different.
yeah.
The retention is going to be different. And by the way, a lot of times we forget that the partner or spouse of the executive
Uh-huh.
will probably have a harder time at adjusting because they've had to leave their whole life behind, their
Yeah.
routine behind. So it's important when we talk about the cross-cultural training for short-term assignees or even expats that we
Mhm.
take into account the whole family experience
Uh-huh.
in order to be able to create a harmonious environment quickly, because people can very easily and quickly become demoralized when they have to deal with the it's like a grief. It's like a bereavement of leaving everything they held dear behind. And when we talk about culture shock, it's not so much that you idealize the place that you're coming from. It's more that you are grieving the sense of control that you had because
Mhm.
you were living your life kind of like an automatic pilot. And now all of a sudden you have to think about everything, all
Yeah.
of the tiny little details, like where is the light switch in this new house? Or how do I order cheese in kilos versus pounds or whatever, stupid
Good.
things like that,
Yes.
that
Yes.
can wear you down. And if you are not prepared for that, it can take a toll. I've seen my share of cases where marriages have been put to the test,
Yes.
where people are just, they wind up having a failed assignment and having to be repatriated, which then becomes a very expensive endeavor because the company didn't think ahead to
Yeah.
prepare this person for what lay ahead. And it's just something it's a very small investment, which in the long run will be providing fruits and a how much higher return on investment for sure.
I totally agree with you because so often companies they do a good job at training the person in question who is going for an assignment, but so often they don't think about the family because within that family everyone is different. We cannot assume they're the same. Everyone deal with changes differently. Everyone sees things differently. And I do see the need of not only a training for the person who is going an assignment, but the entire family. I had an assignment before for somebody who lives in Sweden, but of a Pakistani background. And I was surprised. He had a wife and three children. And I was surprised that the training was not for the entire family, because now you are training one person and preparing them to deal with the new environment, but you're not doing it for the rest. So even with that, there will be some challenges within the family that will create a lot of issues for adaptation and for continuity of that particular assignment.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. Not to mention that a lot of times things change. We've got our current events, things are happening all the time.
yeah,
So, are you going to be changing your videos or workbooks every X amount of time?
yeah,
Whereas in a more interactive environment, it's a lot easier to be able to make those adjustments as they come along. And you're not going to be subject to outdated information. You'll be probably working a lot more interactively, being able to ask personalized questions, get a coaching where you need it, especially when it comes to issues, sensitive issues that have to do
yeah,
with communication, giving feedback, retention,
yeah,
real live examples of challenges that you might be facing. It's so superior to have an instructor led session in those
yeah,
types of circumstances.
yeah, absolutely. And the issue of these e-learning modules and how important it is for companies to understand that that particular model, however much of information you're putting out there, it will not substitute for the real instruction or education with instructor and trainer. So that is quite important, because it's so much linked with the generalization fact and also the stereotyping issue that we may fall into, and then the whole thing is just not working. So
Exactly.
final say before we say goodbye.
It just, I would just say it's worth it to invest in a quality training in order to have a better result long term.
Okay, you heard it. Get advice from real people. Yeah, modules and all that will help, but definitely a real life experience with a real person makes the entire experience quite different. All right, until then, stay safe and be well. See you soon. Bye bye.